Rome, August 11th, 1492. As the bells of St. Peter's Basilica toll across the Eternal City, a Spanish cardinal ascends to the throne of St. Peter. His name is Rodrigo Borgia, and he will become Pope Alexander VI. But this is no ordinary papal election. This is the beginning of one of history's most scandalous dynasties, a family that would turn the Vatican into their personal empire, wielding faith as a weapon and sin as currency. Our story begins not in Rome, but in Valencia, Spain, where Rodrigo Borgia was born into minor nobility in 1431. The Borgias, originally known as Borja, were ambitious, cunning, and hungry for power. Young Rodrigo's uncle, Alfonso de Borja, had already climbed the ecclesiastical ladder, and when he became Pope Calixtus III in 1455, he pulled his nephew into the Vatican's inner sanctum. At just 25 years old, Rodrigo Borgia was made a cardinal. He was handsome, charismatic, and utterly ruthless. While other clergymen preached poverty, Rodrigo accumulated wealth. While they spoke of chastity, he indulged in pleasure. He understood something fundamental about power. Morality was negotiable, but influence was eternal. Enter Vannozza de Catane, a Roman beauty from a respectable family. Despite his sacred vows of celibacy, Rodrigo took Vannozza as his mistress. Their relationship would last decades and produce 4 children who would shake the foundations of Christendom: Juan, Cesare, Lucrezia, and Joffre. These were not merely the Pope's bastards. They were his instruments of power, his living weapons in the game of thrones. When Pope Innocent VIII died in 1492, Rodrigo Borgia saw his moment. The papal conclave gathered to elect the new vicar of Christ. But this was no holy proceeding. This was an auction. Rodrigo Borgia brought mules loaded with silver to the Vatican. He purchased votes with gold, promises of cardinalships, and lucrative church positions. He bribed, threatened, and negotiated until he had secured enough support. On August 26, 1492, Rodrigo Borgia became Pope Alexander VI. As the Triple Crown was placed upon his head, Rome trembled with anticipation and fear. The Borgias had arrived, and they would stop at nothing to cement their dynasty. What followed was a reign that blurred the lines between the sacred and the profane, between divine authority and earthly corruption. Cesare Borgia, the Pope's second son, was a force of nature. Handsome, intelligent, and utterly merciless, Cesare was initially destined for the church. His father made him a cardinal at just 18 years old. But Cesare had no interest in prayer. He craved conquest. In an unprecedented move, he renounced his cardinalship to become a military commander, the first person in history to willingly abandon the red hat. With his father's papal blessing and French military support, Cesare launched a brutal campaign to conquer the Romagna region of Italy. He was ruthless in his efficiency. Cities that resisted were destroyed. Leaders who opposed him disappeared in the night. Niccolò Machiavelli himself would later use Cesare Borgia as the model for The Prince, his treatise on power politics. Cesare understood that it was better to be feared than loved, and he cultivated fear like a master gardener. Then there was Lucrezia Borgia, perhaps the most misunderstood figure of the Renaissance. Born in 1480, Lucrezia was beautiful, educated, and cultured. But in the Borgia family, daughters were currency. Her father and brother would marry her off 3 times, each marriage serving their political ambitions. Rumors swirled around Lucrezia, whispers of poison rings, of incestuous relationships, of murders committed in silk and shadow. At 13 years old, Lucrezia was married to Giovanni Sforza, Lord of Pesaro. The marriage was purely political, an alliance with the powerful Sforza family of Milan. But when the Borgias no longer needed the Sforzas, the marriage became inconvenient. Pope Alexander annulled it, claiming it had never been consummated. Giovanni Sforza, humiliated and enraged, began spreading vicious rumors about Lucrezia and her family, accusations that would haunt her forever. Lucrezia's second marriage was to Alfonso of Aragon, Duke of Bisceglie. For a brief moment, it seemed Lucrezia had found genuine love. She bore him a son and appeared genuinely happy. But Alfonso was from Naples, and the Borgias' political allegiances had shifted toward France, Naples' enemy. In July 1500, assassins attacked Alfonso on the steps of St. Peter's Basilica. He survived, but weeks later, while recovering under Lucrezia's care, he was strangled in his bed. The assassin? Most historians point to Cesare Borgia, eliminating an inconvenient brother-in-law. The Borgia story is one of history's most captivating tales of power, betrayal, and ambition. If you're enjoying this journey into the shadows of the Renaissance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe to Echoes of Hidden Tales. We bring you the untold stories that shaped our world, the scandals, the secrets, and the truths hidden in history's shadows. Now let's continue with the Borgias' descent into darkness. October 30th, 1501. The Vatican hosted one of the most infamous events in papal history, the Banquet of Chestnuts. According to contemporary accounts, Pope Alexander invited 50 courtesans to the Vatican for an evening of debauchery. The entertainment included women crawling naked on the floor to collect chestnuts, followed by public competitions of carnal excess. Prizes were awarded to those who could couple with the most women. Whether exaggerated or accurate, the story cemented the Borgias' reputation for transforming the Holy See into a den of vice. Poison was the Borgias' signature weapon. They allegedly perfected a mixture called la Cantarella, a white powder derived from arsenic that caused symptoms resembling natural illness. Cardinals who opposed the Pope would fall mysteriously ill at dinner parties. Wealthy churchmen would die suddenly, allowing the Pope to seize their estates. The Vatican became a place where every cup of wine was suspect, every meal potentially fatal. June 14, 1497. Juan Borgia, the Pope's eldest and favorite son, attended a dinner party in Rome. That night, he vanished. His body was discovered days later in the Tiber River, stabbed 9 times. Pope Alexander was devastated, weeping openly and threatening to abdicate. Who killed Juan? Suspects included jealous nobles, political enemies, and rival families. But the darkest theory pointed to his own brother, Cesare Borgia, eliminating the competition for their father's favor and removing an obstacle to his own ambitions. In 1501, Lucrezia was married for the third and final time to Alfonso d'Este, heir to the Duchy of Ferrara. This marriage would transform her life. Initially reluctant, the Este family eventually accepted Lucrezia. Away from Rome and her family's toxic influence, she blossomed into a respected patron of the arts, a capable administrator, and a beloved duchess. She surrounded herself with poets, artists, and scholars. The woman Rome called a poisoner became Ferrara's most cherished leader. In Ferrara, Lucrezia sponsored artists like Titian and poets like Pietro Bembo, who became possibly her lover and lifelong correspondent. She governed the duchy during her husband's absences, demonstrating political acumen that surprised her critics. The scandalous daughter of Pope Alexander was transforming into a Renaissance ideal, educated, cultured, and gracious. Perhaps the greatest mystery of Lucrezia Borgia is this. Was she ever the monster they claimed, or merely a pawn who finally broke free? August 18th, 1503. In the sweltering heat of a Roman summer, Pope Alexander VI fell violently ill after a dinner party at a vineyard. Within days, he was dead at age 72. Ironically, rumors spread that he had been poisoned, perhaps by his own Cantarella, intended for wealthy cardinals whose estates he planned to seize. His body decomposed rapidly in the heat, swelling grotesquely. Some said it was divine judgment. The Borgia Pope, who had wielded poison as a tool, may have perished by it. Cesare Borgia was also stricken ill at the same dinner, though he survived. But without his father's papal protection, his empire crumbled overnight. The territories he had conquered rebelled. His enemies emerged from the shadows. He was imprisoned, escaped, and eventually died in 1507 at age 31 in an obscure skirmish in Spain. A warrior prince reduced to a mercenary, killed in a meaningless battle. Machiavelli's perfect prince had failed to account for the one variable he couldn't control: mortality. Lucrezia Borgia outlived them all. She remained in Ferrara, ruling with wisdom and grace. She bore 8 children and became increasingly religious in her later years, perhaps seeking redemption for her family's sins. In 1519, at age 39, she died following childbirth complications. On her deathbed, she wore the hair shirt of a penitent beneath her silk gowns, a woman caught forever between two worlds, the sacred and the profane. How should history judge the Borgias? They were products of their time, an era when the papacy was as much a political office as a spiritual one, when power required ruthlessness, and when survival demanded compromise. Yet even by Renaissance standards, the Borgias stood apart. They transformed corruption into art, ambition into dynasty, and the Vatican into their personal chessboard. Many accusations against the Borgias were exaggerated by their enemies. The incest charges against Lucrezia remain unproven. The extent of their poisonings is debated. But beneath the embellishments lies undeniable truth. They were a family who bent the church to their will, who treated sacred office as personal property, and who believed power justified any means. They were not uniquely evil. They were uniquely successful at what many attempted. The Borgias' legacy extends far beyond the Renaissance. They have inspired countless novels, plays, operas, and television series. They represent our fascination with the corruption of power, with the seductive nature of sin, with the eternal question: how far would you go to protect your family? In the Borgias, we see humanity stripped of pretense, naked ambition, raw power, and the intoxicating danger of absolute authority. Today, if you visit Rome, you can still walk where the Borgias walked. The Vatican apartments where Alexander held his scandalous parties now house priceless artwork. The Castel Sant'Angelo, where Lucrezia sought refuge, stands as a museum. The churches where Cesare plotted military campaigns welcome tourists. The Borgias are gone, but their shadows remain. A reminder that even the most sacred institutions are run by humans, with all our capacity for greatness and depravity. The story of the Borgias forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, faith, and human nature. Can institutions built on spiritual authority survive when wielded for worldly gain? Can individuals corrupted by absolute power ever find redemption? The Borgias didn't answer these questions. They embodied them. They were the Pope's children of sin and power, and their tale remains one of history's most captivating warnings, that the highest throne can house the darkest heart. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of history's most scandalous dynasties. If you're fascinated by the hidden stories of the past, subscribe to Echoes of Hidden Tales for more documentaries that explore the secrets, betrayals, and untold truths that shaped our world. Like this video, share it with fellow history lovers, and let us know in the comments. Do you think the Borgias were uniquely corrupt, or simply better at the game everyone was playing? Until next time, keep listening for the echoes of hidden tales.